Hello, everyone. Welcome to Perceptuous Anonymous. My name is Christiane, and I will be your emotional support host. You guys, I'm really excited to be here with you today, as per always. I am so excited to be able to have my guest of the day, Courtney Dupuy. Courtney is she's been my best friend for a very long time, and we have a really interesting set of discussion today. Courtney is an author. She is an instructor of creative writing and an editor and a newfound mother. And how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Christy, for having me on. How are you?
I'm good. Anyone that's been listening to the show for a little while knows that I've been moving around a little bit. So I'm happy to be sort of a little grounded, and able to put out some more material and content for you guys. And today, especially, we're going to have a really interesting conversation.
I hope so.
All right, you guys, today we're confronting Neo-Marxism. Let's just fucking do it, I guess. For the last couple episodes, I've been covering the topics of anarchism, and poor Courtney, I mean, she's just listened to me talk about this shit for years. And I stopped talking about it for a while, and then around my birthday, I was like, no, you know what, I started getting into more of these political philosophies, and I think that with Courtney having brought up the idea of this topic today, you guys, we're only going to get deeper down the fucking rabbit hole, I think, as time goes on. So buckle up. All right.
I think we'll be like rambling a little bit. I don't know. We'll ramble back and forth and see where we go. Yeah.
I know. I apologize to her. I was like, dude, I've gotten kind of used to doing this by myself now. And now I'm like, I've been talking, like, I just keep talking. So I apologize. So we're just gonna get some few key points out, and then we're just gonna fucking give you a lot of our opinions on how this might be able to be recognized in our society. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the idea of neo-Marxism, and I know that for myself, before doing research, it's been something that I've heard. I mean, we've all kind of heard of it, especially particularly during the 2016 election, where we have this really significant dispute between the conservative right and the progressive left, or whatever, and the various variations in between. But it's been something that the left has been criticized for, and like increasingly so. They call them socialists and communists and Marxists, and I was like, I don't know what that means to the extent I'm moderately familiar with the idea of communism. And after spending the last couple of days researching this, I'm really interested in seeing to what extent this does play a part in how we're seeing our society progress right now. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to define this idea of neo-Marxism right now. I'm going to start by defining Marxism moderately, and then progressing into neo-Marxism, and then we're going to just freaking talk about how it might be happening. All right, so what is Marxism? These are just my short-term notes. Like always, I will be posting some resources for you guys down at the bottom of my Podbean, or any of the places that you come across my material, so you guys can do some more research on your own. But it says, in my words, Marx believes that the economic power led to political power, and that is the key understanding of society. Neo-Marxists believe that the economic system, capitalism particularly, it's in contrast to capitalism, creates a wealthy class of owners and a poor worker class. They also believe that social institutions such as the church, prisons, and schools are created to maintain division between what is called the powerful or the powerless. So at least in maybe you have a different, or maybe you have a more fluid understanding of this than I do, Courtney, but
I don't know.
It's heavy. This is a heavy topic. So at least my ideas are, okay, so Marxism is I believe it's a subsector of communism, but Marxism is a critique of the capitalist system, saying that there are only two classes of people. There are the elites, the bourgeoisie, and then there are the proletariat, or the worker class, and that it is primarily manifested via the means of production, so economically. So basically, there's no war except the class war, which is an Against Me song. Says there's no war except the class war. And I didn't realize what he meant until yesterday, and I was like, oh, I get it. That is the only thing they think about. But when we have Neo-Marxism, they're what are referred to as cultural Marxists, which break it down much further. And honestly, I don't fucking think they're wrong. I think they're absolutely right, but I think that some of the ways they're criticizing it are a little bit iffy. What are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Well, I mean, I'm not like well versed in all of this. I read a lot about a lot of different things. So I have an interest in it really, but not.
Yeah,
like,
totally. That's all good.
I know. But I was reading, I'm on this website called theeconlib.org. So, about economics and how this guy's article is called Marxism by David Chitko. It's on Econlib, CEE, Labor Schools of Economic Thought.
Cool.
And he talks about how Karl Marx is like a critic of capitalism. He has a masterpiece in 1867 called Capital. And quote, the theory's basic claim is simple. The value of a commodity can be objectively measured by the average number of labor hours required to produce that commodity. This is, end quote, sorry, the labor theory of value. And the idea of like capitalism back then in 1867 was that however many number of labor hours it required to, quote, feed, clothe, protect each worker each day so that the worker is fit for the next day, end quote, is equal to a $5 wage per one labor hour. Like essentially like 5 to 1 is like the ratio. So I guess what I'm getting at, according to like this definition of Marx's like critique of capitalism, and like what you might, I think we're getting into today is like, how is that reflected in our society today? And there's like, we're in the middle of this thing called the Great Resignation, because those like labor hours per like wage capita, like the workers selling their, what he called, I think what Pritchett called, and what also Marx called labor power, is like, it's not doing those things it's meant to do, feed, clothe, protect each worker each day in a society so that the worker is fit for work the next day. So I don't know, that was just on this little article on this website here.
No, that was great. That's really great information. Thank you for bringing that up. And God, I didn't even think about the idea of the Great Resignation. I guess, I don't know, like, I guess on my own personal experience, like shifting from an hourly job into like a tipped job where I make hourly, and then I'm able to sort of progress my social skills to make more money. And even that's kind of out, it's not even up to me necessarily, I can give great service as a server and still not make a lot of money. However, so the idea of exchanging your labor for an hourly wage, and that's one thing that I discovered when I was researching anarchist philosophy and anarchist theory, is that part of the differentiation between there's this thing called anarcho-communism. And to me, like when I was young and I heard that term, I was like, no fucking way, dude. Like you can't be an anarchist and a communist. And then, as I grow older, I'm like, all right, I guess I see where they're going. It's the utmost ideological of the ideologies, essentially. On paper, if everything turned out a certain way, it would turn out this way. But they're expressing that communism tends to, it's what's called a needs-based, not an economy, but like a needs-based system where it makes sure that all of your needs are met, as opposed to like where capitalism, where it's like, it's an expansive, like as much as you're able to expand. So obviously cutting down your labor costs, cutting down your resource costs, and then doing your best to create the most profit that you can. That's where these two things really create like a differentiation. Communism, they say that not all communism has to end in dictatorial stances. They say that, ideally, I think it could work on really small scales. Maybe communism could, but on bigger scales, we have just never seen it really. We've never gotten the chance to see it work. And Neo-Marxism, I don't know,
Well, on the other hand, one of Marx's like main criticisms of capitalism was that and this is another quote from this guy's paper, and I don't want to like overquote him, but
no, you're good, dude. Do it. I read direct fucking pages. I don't care. As long as you resource it, we're good.
All right. All right. Thank you, David Pacheco, for letting me read your work, I hope. Marx asked, quote, if all goods and services in a capitalist society tend to be sold at prices and wages in parentheses that reflect their true value measured by labor hours, how can it be that capitalists enjoy profits? End quote. And that like logic basically leads us down this road to capitalist what are they called? Exploitation. Exploiting, you know, the lower like labor class
hand in hand, dude.
Mentioning earlier. So I mean, either way you go, like you can go deep enough, you know, based on human error, which it was another, I think Marxist like concept was he believed in, you know, the natural, free, creative like spirit of humanity, and how I think he, you know, I don't want to like apply anything to him that's not true, but I think based on that, he understood that any like system was going to fail inevitably because of human, you know, flaws. Anyway.
I think that's how conspiracy theories actually flaw too, is like, that's the day that I heard someone say like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I am a conspiratorially minded by nature, but it is very true that in order for these conspiracies to work out the way that we think that they would, I mean, obviously depending on the one and depending on to like what extent or what is a margin of error that we have, that would require everything particularly happening in a very specific way. Like you think of the Kennedy assassination, which I fucking believe absolutely is a conspiracy, but that's beyond me. Then you think of things like the moon landing and like all these, like, it would require every single person playing a part to the T with no human error at all. And that is, I mean, that's an issue.
Or just like a fascinating development of coincidences, which, you know, is like necessarily, I mean, nature's like that, you know, but who knows?
Yeah, dude. Or like, I think of that like coronavirus. I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily think that we have been poisoned by coronavirus, but I do think that it's been exploited. And I do think that
to suppress our freedoms. I agree.
It's been like utilized, you know what I mean? So while something may happen and it may not be negatively minded or like viciously intended, whatever happened afterwards came, you know, from it. So, and that's, you know what, that is something that I'd like to say about Neo-Marxism as well, is I was so excited to actually read this definition of Neo-Marxism that I opened up the show with, that says like, while Marxism is highly critical of economic system, and essentially that is the only thing it's highly critical of is our economic system, because they say whoever has the economic power has power over everything else. But when you take Neo-Marxism,
it's a self-governed system, like an ownership, like self-governs.
Yeah, or like they just don't take into any other aspects, because with the Neo-Marxism, they start integrating ideas of psychology and sociology and religion and gender and identity politics. And I don't think that they're wrong. I think that one thing that Neo-Marxism gets criticized for is that, like, the people on the right, or people whomever, I'm not going to say left or right, fucking whatever, but it gets criticized by saying, you know, they want us to have 150 genders. They want to take away the nuclear family. They want to, I don't even fucking know where I'm going with this anymore, but I think that it's being criticized for being something that's extremely ideological and extremely open-minded, and it's confronting what we know as a society at the core. But I do think that the things it's critiquing need to be fucking critiqued. I think that some of the standards of patriarchal expectations need to be critiqued. Our system of government needs to be fucking critiqued. Our system of money, this labor exchange needs to be critiqued. Like, all of these ideas that we are asking ourselves, so we're getting to the point in history in society where we're like, no, I'm not just going to fucking be told what to do as a woman because I'm a woman. I'm also not just going to marry a man because I'm supposed to do that. I'm not going to take his last name, or I'm not going to just get a job because I have to. I'm not, I don't know. Any of these things that we're starting to question that have never been questioned blatantly before, I think could lend to very good things for our individuality, but it also could lend to us no longer having a system to rely on. If we don't have genders, if we don't have family, if we don't have any of these core structures that we normally have had, then I don't know where that leads, and that can be very dangerous.
Yeah, it really can. I agree. I mean, I don't know. I'm just looking at some notes I have here on Neo-Marxism. And I think this is kind of interesting because you were talking about like how we need to be able to have like discussions and dialects, and I think you said back and forths. And I feel like a lot of that outrageous language that you were talking about, people using against one another, is shutting down like that avenue of progression. And I looked up Neo-Marxism today, and there's this guy, James Lindsay, on, what is this? Encyclopedia. Oh, I don't know. I'll find it for you. I'll find the link.
You can just send it to me. We'll click it. Yeah.
Okay. So I looked up, oh, James Lindsay was the one you sent me, I think. So abuses of language was like a really interesting term that he used. And then I looked up the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Hegelian dialectical synthesis was also a term that this guy used. So dialectics, quote, this Encyclopedia of Philosophy, is a term used to describe a method of philosophical argument that involves some sort of contradictory process between opposing sides, end quote. And the example they use is Plato and his dialogues, like Socrates. And then, quote, the back and forth debate between opposing sides produces a kind of linear progression or evolution in philosophical views or oppositions, end quote. And then finally, just something they talk about how in response to like these dialects or these conversations rather, like people refine their opinions, and as they refine their opinions, like society progresses. But there's really, it doesn't seem like there's really a conversation going on in the media, at least. But I think like on a ground level, people are like a lot more open lately to having conversations if they have them, like encounters are so rare, I feel like, online or even elsewise. For me anyways, I don't have social media, so
I know, good for you. It's hard. I know that it hurts my feelings, but
no, it's, I don't know, it's just not good for me. It's like, it doesn't feel like I can't moderate it, but like I wish I could, it'd be nice to be able to talk to people, but there's like so much BS out there. Like I just find myself yelling at whoever about whatever.
Yeah, there's some good things too. I know that I avoided getting a fucking TikTok for so long, and then upon having it, I have discovered some really profound things, and it has really just, part of it's really dumb as fuck and part of it's really shitty, but that's just kind of society. But then there's other things that just continue to surprise me, the level of creativity that people have, in addition to the level of like internet culture is really interesting. I want to do an episode on the idea of postmodernism because it makes me think of that poster you have in your closet. We'll talk about that in just a second. But it makes me think of, oh my God, dude. It makes me think of where you have like one joke, and it started out like one meme is representative of like a cartoon. And then you'll put funny words on it and you'll make a joke. And then the next person will take it and they'll take the joke a little bit further, but then they can relate that joke to another joke. And I found that there's been certain times where I've seen these memes go so deep into like, just, I don't know, like, I hope I'm explaining that well, where it relates other memes that happened years ago. And it's just, I find it can be so brilliant. It truly is. And then I guess in terms of how that relates to postmodernism, which goes back into Marxism in a second, but postmodernism, at least my understanding, is that it is where nothing means anything anymore, that everything can be used as in relation to everything else. And while it was initially used as an art form, you know, or like typically it'd be like you use spray paint, but the spray paint's used to do really fine art, or you use fine art to do really shitty art, or you can combine all these different formalities that usually were just done by themselves, and then you put it together and it blends the rules between them. And I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing in society, and that's part of some of the criticism of neo-Marxism that occurs, is because we are blending, we're taking something that meant something like the nuclear family, religion, gender, and then we're expanding it so far beyond what it was and what our ideas of it was, that some people feel like it's completely losing its value, while some people believe it's expanding its value.
Yeah.
And some people think that nothing, that they say Marxists just want to destroy everything, and Marxists are like, well, I think that you guys have had rule over everything for so long that you guys don't even know what anything else is. Was that me rambling, or did that make sense?
I was thinking about what you said regarding postmodernism and the way that it expands on other ideas. And I don't know, the definition I found of neo-Marxism was a term loosely applied to any sociological analysis which draws on the ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, but amends or extends these, usually by incorporating elements from other intellectual traditions. So like, I guess I was kind of like trying to figure out who the like who you mean by neo-Marxist and like Marxists, and like I don't know if I feel like I understand if we're on the same definition, or like if I don't know. I'm just one of those people that's like, what's this like?
I guess I'm talking like the theoretical they, but I also think, I guess when I think of the idea of neo-Marxism, I think of Jordan Peterson. And this is something that I really am grateful for you, because you've introduced me to his work. But I know that a lot of his work is critical of the university system. And so it's through, I guess that more or less that's who I mean by they, is these intellectuals that are creating a narrative that is pushing people to go into more liberal arts. At least this is like me quoting the idea of Jordan Peterson, and this is just me talking, you know, I don't know to what extent I believe this, but that there are people going into the bigger parts of our society, like people going into government or people going into media, and they are taking these neo-Marxist ideas of power struggle, and they're producing it inside of the cultural narrative, and they're using pop culture. At least this guy that I posted, you guys, I'll post to this as well. This guy has a podcast called New Discourse Podcast, and he really largely criticizes. What'd you say?
James Lindsay, was that the guy?
Oh, it must be him. Yeah, it must be the same guy. He was really, you guys, listen to this podcast. I'm so impressed with what he's saying. And essentially, what does it say here? The notes that I took from his ideas are relative to what people call wokeness, like, don't tell me what gender I am, don't tell me anything about myself. And so in that way, it expands what an individual is allowed to be outside of what we think an individual is supposed to be. But then it also takes away from, you know, if we have no boundaries, then we have no boundaries to rely on either. We have no way of interrelating. I don't know. What does this say here? Are you familiar with critical race theory, dude?
I mean, I don't know.
I know. I'm like, where do I even start? I had all these ideas, and now I'm trying to integrate all these fucking all these topics.
Okay. I don't know. Here's an idea. We were talking about like Plato and his dialogues earlier, and like how that conversation of back and forth needs to happen. And then you kind of mentioned woke culture, and like how I don't know, I don't like to use like,
I'm leading,
I don't know, I don't like to be like, oh yeah, woke culture, like, and then, you know, you can use this big umbrella term that means like whoever cares to like name it in the moment. And I don't know, you know, like it's important to be specific sometimes, but like
absolutely.
But like as far as woke culture goes, like saying like I'm not this or I'm not that, or don't tell me what I am. Like
Yeah.
I can extend that idea of my personhood. And going back to the idea of like Plato's dialogues informing like Marxist theories, like there's another idea I came across called Platonism,
Oh,
and it's quote the theory of forms.
yeah.
Platonism and its theory of forms denies the existence of the natural world, considering it only an image or copy of the real world. And that was just like a Wikipedia kind of thing. But like,
That's cool.
I guess I was thinking that when you back to the postmodernism thing, like where you can kind of give value to anything, like at one point, and like, it's kind of, I feel like we're kind of like there in a way, like already in all of this like neo-Marxist like stuff is going on. All these like, so, like you said, people are kind of stepping forward and like breaking the rules.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are like all of a sudden like billionaires or like millionaires just overnight, and like I think it's great that those opportunities are there for people, but it's also clear that like those opportunities are the result of like excess, like in so many ways. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I'm like all about nature and the wild, so like I don't, I'm like saving the polar bears and stuff. Like, but, like, here we are using. I don't know. It's just where do you even go from there?
I'm with you. I feel I guess I feel like I'm dancing around the key components of what neo-Marxism is, and I feel like I apologize. I feel like all I've done is confront the situation without explaining what the fucking situation is. I'm already like jumping ahead of it before explaining like why I'm feeling a certain way. Because I have all these notes, and you guys, I'm so ADHD. So I write notes in one order and I just pray that I follow it. Because it's very hard. So
at least I'm jumping everywhere.
Oh my God, it's madness, dude. I've just learned like if people that listen to this show, they just know. I just fucking talk, and I talk myself into some understanding or not. And then I'm like, okay, cool. See you guys next week. Like, thanks for the very public journal entry. Okay, all right. So I guess I'm just gonna basically read these fucking notes that I have on it. Neo-Marxists believe that all social issues are manifestations of underlying power struggles as opposed to real valid social beliefs. So I think that is a very key component, and I believe that that's a component based on this critical theory. And it says that it teaches students to seek empowerment and emancipation, which is what we just talked about in terms of defining who you are outside of what you think social or cultural standards are. Like, you don't have to just be a man because you're born a man, whatever. Like any of these things that we are progressing to be that we're using to be more progressive in. But it basically argues that people only tell themselves there are certain things or identify as certain things because they don't think that there are any other options, that they are just following the narrative that we've been taught as children, and that this narrative has been created by people in power. And so it's saying is it tries to teach students to seek empowerment and emancipation from these unjust, and I quote, fake social consciousness. And neo-Marxists are referring to the fake social consciousness as the world that we're living in society, at least in the Western society of I don't know, just anything really. They think that, God, it's hard. I feel like it's hard to explain. It's teaching students ways of mapping how power shapes our understanding of the world, and that this is the first step to fighting social injustice. So essentially, the idea of neo-Marxism is finding ways of understanding where power is being asserted culturally, verbally, individually, just in any way. Like you hear these terms microaggressions or anything that is, I don't know, they think that power is manifested in absolutely everything, and that we have to question absolutely everything in order to decondition ourselves from this programming that we've been bred into, which is what they call the fake consciousness. So if you're born a white heterosexual man of good political or good economic withstanding, they say that that is not a valid stance, and that that is just something that's happened to you, as opposed, like, if you call yourself a Christian, they say, no, you're not a Christian, you've just been told that you're a Christian. Or you're not a man, you've just been told that you're a man. Like, certain things that we've always, or at least in our understanding, we have relied on because we've been told to. And I do agree with that we've been told that the world is a certain way, and that we're supposed to work a certain way, and that these are facilitated through the schooling system. And one thing that I do agree with in regards to Marxism and Neo-Marxism is that they say that there are two classes. There's the worker class and there's the elitist class, and that both of these classes are facilitated through progeny, so through your childhood, through your parents, and through your system. And so there is an elitist class that is taught how to do things differently than us worker class. We're not taught economics to the point that they are. We're not taught how money works. We're not taught, particularly money, I'd say. I do think that there's a vast differentiation between public schooling and fucking private schooling, and that does facilitate this change in class workership, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to how much influence money has today, but at the same time, like, I don't know, like, calling it, there's a lot that goes into, like, the idea of power that you were bringing up earlier. Like, there's so many different, I think, elements that construct a narrative of power.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, I think what we give attention to as people, like, in our daily lives, like, is where we're conducting our power. But, to conduct your power into a force that feels meaningful without like engaging in a society is, like, I think, against our nature, because we're not really like isolated creatures, but we're becoming more isolated, and that was kind of, alienation was like an element of Marx's theory. I was reading alienation of the individual, like, from society, like, as he like sells himself out more and more and more, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and then you have capitalism on the other side that's saying you need to focus on the individual, or maybe not capitalism, but the contrary to neo-Marxism says you have to, like, if you focus on group consciousness to so large an extent that you can lose your individual, but then fucking Marxism says you lose your individual because you become part of this working system. That's funny. That's an unfortunate misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, well, and also, as for the nature of like a social narrative, like conducting what or defining what we call reality together, that is being challenged right now by like the woke culture, as as they're dubbed.
As they're called. That's like I didn't realize that it is such a thing, but that it is, it's a thing.
Yeah. But the fact that paradigm is being challenged by these outrageous ideas is, it looks crazy now, but there's always like a backswing eventually. And, we kind of pendulum, like, as these ideas kind of filter through our culture, and our culture is like increasingly global, like, so it's like huge and it changes quickly. And I think, we have potential to create enormous change. That doesn't involve like all of these, or maybe does involve like maybe an ultimate neo-Marxist like something, instead of like a Ferris wheel, maybe like a train that goes in a circle. I don't know, like, or a spiral, but I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, it feels so doom and gloom sometimes to just mention neo-Marxism, because you were getting into, like, I don't know, it ended with like the Eastern Bloc and like all these countries deciding like they were not going to be part of Russia anymore, like because they were not like the ideal utopian like version of that like didn't happen. Again, like, human nature is just so flawed. Like, we could do these amazing things, but like, again, what is contributing to our power is also, hundreds of thousands of years of biology and evolution, and like our instincts are not designed to like react to our environment, like this technological environment yet, I don't think, although we are evolving, I think, quickly, according to some, I don't know, TED Talks I watched. But I mean, as far as what constitutes reality, I told you about this book by Jeremy Narby, like the Stanford anthropologist, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge. He talks about, these Amazonian, this tribesmen who like practice or eat ayahuasca, have ayahuasca ceremonies, and they learn their medicine like from the jungle by like tripping balls in the jungle, basically, and interacting with like what they see there as like real. That's their other, is it's like not an other, it's like part of their reality, and like that's an agreed upon social like construct, like, and that's what makes it reality. Like, essentially what determines reality is like what the primary social narrative deems acceptable, you know what I mean? And trying to change that by like changing the narrative and like the fundamentals of language is like, it's a great way to start, but we have to build in place of like tearing down, I think, as well, like try to have those back and forth discourses rather than just shutting down.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that is one thing that's an interesting miscommunication as well between the left and the right. Is one thing that Neo-Marxism is criticized for is for its use of language, and what Neo-Marxism is criticizing the capitalist system for is its use of language. It says, Neo-Marxism says, your language asserts dominance in certain ways, and it teaches us who the power people are. And then people on the right are looking at Neo-Marxists and they say, you're using language in a different way by saying that it's like, by saying you're not allowed to say certain things. And that's one big criticism of Neo-Marxism, is that it is inherently very restrictive to speech, because it says that speech creates power, and everything you say you need to be careful of so that you do not offend someone else, or you do not suppress someone else in any other way. And that's that's the primary, that is a huge issue. And actually, one criticism I have for the guy who runs the New Discourse podcast is that he says, he's like, the Neo-Marxists are trying to use language in a different way. They call it critical thinking. And we think of critical thinking, it means, criticizing something or asking questions about it. But what they really mean is critical thinking in terms of this critical theory philosophy, And I was like, dude, that's the same thing we all do. We all do that. It's like using fucking italics with your mouth, Like we put emphasis on certain words over other words to use like a poetic license on changing something. So language is constantly evolving. But I think the issue is when you tell someone you can't say something, and then they're telling you can't say something, and that's what's fucking happening. They tell the right, or they like even shitty fucking Donald Trump, they say they restrict his speech, and they restrict a lot of like fucking Twitter is extremely restrictive of conservative speech. And they say, we're only restricting your speech because you are suppressing other people. And it's like, yeah, but you tend to only criticize people on the right. And then we have people on the left saying, all right, so you're not allowed to say that because it is oppressive to me. And then they are suppressing the fucking speech of the people on the right, saying you can't do that. And it's vice versa, So everyone is telling each other, you can't do that, you can't do that. And they're saying, well, you can't do that and you can't do that. And we need to be able to have these discussions. And the only way that these discussions occur is by having these discussions, is by letting people say stupid shit. It's by letting people say profound shit. It's by letting people talk to each other in order to create a more unified whole. You can't tell someone not to fucking say something. You can express to them how it makes you feel, or you can express to them, you can have a reaction, you can have a whatever, but I think that though people in neo-Marxist philosophy think what they're doing is creating an opposition to oppression, they are also creating oppression in and of itself, you know? So it's like, instead of being this guy, also, I'm kind of critical of this podcast guy because he keeps referring to like Angela Davis, and he keeps talking, he's like, yeah, well, these feminists, and what they're doing is they're telling us we can't do this thing. And I'm like, so what's occurring is that now that the dominant factor is being questioned, now that white, cisgender, heterosexual white men are being questioned instead of just being relied upon, or instead of just being like accepted by what they say, you know, that demographic is being questioned now. And now they're being like, hey, why are you fucking suppressing me? You're not supposed to do that. And it's like, well, they say like, oh, these people are being militant. It's like, dude, it's a reaction after years of suppression. He's like, yeah, these Black people are trying to come back and they're trying to suppress us. It's like, dude, after what occurred, like, it's as soon as the wheel has been turned on the power structure, then all of a sudden it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't suppress people. But it's like, what the fuck has been happening for 1,000 years, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was kind of a lot there.
I know.
Like,
Sorry. I know.
yeah.
I just fucking talk now. I don't know.
No, it's good. Let me think. So, I mean, what you're saying about language and abuse of language and like this critical theory or critical thinking becoming this critical theory, those are two different things. And then critical race theory is like its own thing as well. But I think as an academic, as somebody who like taught in a university, the idea of teaching somebody to get to the root of something by critiquing it, like picking it apart, kind of dismembering it, which we do in academics. I think we kind of look at it this way and that way and this way, where like, what does this mean? What is that? You know, like that's, to me, that's the idea of like critical thinking. Like it's like the idea of somebody says to you, we've pulled out of Afghanistan, and then a month later it's like, we're, you know, on the shores of these two other countries right now. On the shores of these two other countries right now, like involved in the tensions there. You know, like you might think, oh, that's not good, we're going to war perhaps. And like there's like that's kind of, you know, that's fear based, but with facts and with research, you know, like that is critical thinking. When you start researching, like I wonder if that's true, and getting into like the but again, just facts. Like sometimes we don't see facts a lot, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to tell what we're talking about sometimes when we're talking about the right and the left and Twitter and this and that, because I don't even know how much of that is real. You know what I mean? Like,
dude,
a lot of those things aren't real. A lot of those are just bots, like, you know, or some 14-year-old. And I'm not saying 14-year-olds aren't real. Obviously they are, but like, you know, it's people figuring themselves out. Like people are not these like static things on like a page. They're, you know, in motion all the time and learning constantly, and like just even engaging with like something online that's been there for like a couple days. Like at this rate, that's engaging with a past version of a person, you know. Ideally, I don't think it's fair to say that like people don't have critical thinking and to like define it as this like critical race theory. But I also
I was quoting the guy. No, that's what this fucking guy was saying.
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you, your criticism of him.
I think it's weird, right? I was like, that seems a little like a little close-minded, or a little like fucking unrealistic almost, you know, too black and white or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But like I also don't think it's okay to like teach people to disassemble things without giving them tools to like build, you know. And I feel like when I got out of college, I was really lucky. I was offered a job like full-time teaching right away, and like 2 weeks after my like I graduated, I was teaching, and then it was like so overwhelming, and I didn't feel like I had the tools or the experience, and like I'd been admitted into these like you know, for me, it was like Hogwarts. I loved college, but teaching there was a nightmare because like I was admitted into like what goes on behind the scenes and like looking at colleges as a business, you know, and like how they
Yeah.
funnel people in for like money and, you know, how, sorry, it's my son. What the bless you, Bush, success rate is, you know, based on statistics of students dropping out, and they like prey on the students who are likely to drop out
Oh,
because
wow.
they get an easy semester out of them. Like it's crazy. Like they're part of this what's called a funnel system. But you know, this was like 5 years ago, maybe, I don't know, 7
Wow.
years ago. So like I don't know how much has changed. I know that that power structure system isn't there anymore at that place, but it's prevalent in academia, like these echo chambers, and online too, you know, on social media, like echo chambers. And it's like, if you really want freedom, like go have a conversation with somebody, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I agree.
face to face. Yeah.
Yeah, it's speaking to the choir. And I think that is one issue that is really scary with online information, is that Google, I've stopped using Google and I've started using DuckDuckGo because I was hearing Joe Rogan talk about it. Because if you use like Google Chrome or Safari or anything, all these other apps will track you, or all these other, like, they'll start developing more data on you cohesively so they understand what you're looking for. And then it will continue to tailor your thoughts back to you. And
Yeah.
you won't really see a lot of information that is outside of what your fucking personalized internet thinks you want to see. And it happens with like me living in a completely different world than you, living in a completely different internet world to my boyfriend, to any other people. Like we're not even seeing the same information. So it's like, we're going to have conversation, you know, vivid, real conversation, candid conversation, in order to cross these boundaries. But at the same time, it's like we don't even realize to what extent that we're not even living in the same world because of how much the internet is tailored via AI. That's a whole other conversation, but it's terrifying.
Oh, well, I mean, it could be terrifying, or, you know, like on a positive note, like you can put your settings like to delete your cookies or whatever, and like
Yeah,
you know, you can have ad track off and stuff. And like, I mean, yes,
that's a
you're
good point.
probably still being monitored in so many other ways, like it doesn't matter, but
We'll just show you the same shit. Like, I mean, that might not even be true, just something I read once.
At this rate, I mean, what are we going to do about that, about like constantly being monitored, you know? Who knows? But I think it's also like, interestingly, like it could be a call for people to act with integrity, you know, and like seeing yourself reflected back at yourself, like in just what you see in your search history. Like it's like weirdly like that movie, there's a movie on Disney right now called like Roy or something, I don't know, it's about this robot that's like broken. He doesn't connect to the internet, and like he has to like
what a nightmare.
Yeah, and he's like he's supposed to be a best friend to this little boy, and
oh man, I'm scared. Everything you just said, I have like, that set fear into me.
Right, it's a little eerie, but it's also like, I mean, you know, having that level of consciousness like allows you to be able to make decisions, to like be curious and reflect and like look into other things, and like, you know, the advantages that we have because of technology are that we can reach out and learn like whatever we want, you know, if we take that learning process and curiosity into our own hands. And like, you need time to do that, you know what I mean? And when it comes down to it, you have people who don't have time like anymore, and they're not getting, you know, what they need to like have time to do that because they're so freaking tired, you know, because of the class disparities that you were mentioning earlier, at least as far as I can tell. But again, I'm not like a professional in any of those areas. It's just what I see sometimes.
Good job for you bringing us back on topic.
Yeah, thanks.
I was just having a realization. I was like, dude, we talk on the phone a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, this is for other people too. I was like, fuck. I was like, we should probably like talk about Neo-Marxism. No, you're right. Okay, so I guess, yeah, to be fair, getting back on topic in terms of labor, exchange of labor for money and how fucking fake money is anyway. I don't know. We've been watching The Matrix last night. We watched we watched the first one and the second one.
Yes,
and
I love The Matrix.
oh my God, the second one, it kind of reminded me of like a James Bond movie. Like I'm halfway through, and while I'm researching Neo-Marxism while still trying to pay attention. And I look over at Shay and I'm like, I don't think I know what's happening. He's like, there's no plot line. That's what's happening. I was like, thank you. I didn't think so. I just thought maybe I wasn't paying attention enough. He's like, no, it's like all action. That's it.
Yeah,
it's all kung fu.
I love it. I love Keanu Reeves. He's like my favorite.
Oh my God. I look forward to watching the third one, and so I'll get back to you on that. But either way.
Yeah, there's a fourth one now, I think.
There's what?
There's a fourth one now. You should watch it.
I think it's called the Animatrix.
Huh?
Animatrix?
Oh no, the regular Matrix, not the Animatrix.
Oh, Animatrix is something different?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Yeah, I wasn't. It all showed up in my research, or it all showed up in my Google search of because I wanted to find them in order, so I didn't like fuck up and watch the third one. Anyway, so we're gonna watch that tonight. So I guess a lot of what we're talking about for AI is like reminding me of that. Anyway, so I guess back to fucking labor and the communism. Back to communism. I don't know. So one thing. I guess we can wrap this up. We can wrap this up right now. I know that we ran a little bit longer. I apologize.
Oh, it's all good. It was nice.
Yeah, this was great. So I guess our solutions to this conversation are: we need to be able to talk to one another. We need to be able to actively listen to one another. We need to be open to other people's perspectives. We also maybe need to be aware of power struggles, and then also question power, but also question where we're being told to question power, I guess.
So many questions.
It's a fucking thing, dude. I think so. That is one thing that I discovered on a Joe Rogan podcast pretty recently. I think he's talking to a CIA agent named Mike Baker, and Mike Baker brings up this interview with a KGB officer from the 80s, and the officer said, what we are doing in the United States is because the United States is so readily available to have other cultures come in, as opposed to Russia. Russia does not allow other cultures to permeate its service, more or less. At least that's what I'm quoting from this guy. And he said that because the United States is so willing to allow other insights and cultures into its culture, we have had the ability of infiltrating it and feeding fake information to it so that it confuses its population and it slowly demoralizes the country. That it takes 20 to 30 years to start demoralizing a country's center, a country's core, a culture's core, to where it no longer knows what it is and no longer knows who it is, and it starts eating at itself because it doesn't have a structured center. And that, in my summation, is why Neo-Marxism is being criticized, is because they say that that's what it's doing, while Neo-Marxists say that they mean well and that they are trying to expand our definition of who we are. But there's that issue that it is demoralizing because we no longer have a sense of self, but it also, hopefully we can eventually find a much stronger individual sense of self. So it's like, it's a lot of these kids, they call them social justice warriors, and they're often young people because young people give a shit. And I am trying to still give a shit, but we're getting old.
I give a shit. I have a 6-month son, so like I really give a shit. I give shit more than I used to give a shit.
But it's hard to do shit though.
I mean,
you know?
Out of all of that though, the idea that things are demoralizing and you can be demoralized because you lose a sense of self, like that really depends on what your sense of self is based on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if your sense of self is based on things that can be manipulated by other people, then you got to dig a little deeper. You know what I mean?
Well, if you don't have the right information, at least that's how I interpret it, is we're being given fake information. Like, we can't trust any of the information online because some of it's conspiracy theory and some of it's real, and we can't tell the difference.
Yeah, so people have to learn how to use common sense. Like, go outside. You know, we grew up in Lake Tahoe, so we were lucky. But we saw, at least I know I saw and have seen, like, the degradation of my environment.
Oh
like,
yeah.
and it's very obvious. It's a totally different atmosphere than it used to be up there. Not just
Yeah.
like in the atmosphere, like literally, like just it's like
Not
warmer.
just climate change. I mean,
Yeah,
like theoretically.
yeah, I mean all around. Like it's a totally different. And also, I think we have these unrealistic perspectives today, like at least that are projected into media. But also, like I know people who just look like these Botox babes, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how do you take care of yourself like to that much of a like a detail, like down to the last little hair? Like it's
Yeah.
neurotic to me, like
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what, I mean, it doesn't have to be. I'm not bashing people who want to look pretty or anything, but like, there's a limit. There's gotta be a limit to like what defines your person that is outside of yourself, because as long as like that's there, like you can be manipulated, you know what I mean? Like there's a place I think in everyone where you just go outside or observe, like interact with your environment, and common sense, it like builds in your physical interaction with your environment. You know what I mean?
Wow. I wasn't, that's very interesting. I didn't expect, yeah, I see what you're coming from. I guess I think we're coming, like I appreciate your interpretation of this is far more grounded, obviously, than even mine is. I think mine is very sociological, because how I'm coming at it is at an idea like, I keep thinking conspiracy theory, like we fucking can't trust our government, but also the fact that we can't trust the government and we don't think we can trust the government. If our government's giving us proper information, we won't even know, because there is
Right.
so much bad information out there. And I guess
Yeah, for
that's what I
sure.
mean by demoralizing, because if you stop believing in your fucking system of power, if you stop believing in your systems that give you systems in general, then that can be very dangerous. And I think that that's why Neo-Marxism is being criticized, is because it's saying, if we can't believe in anything, then we don't believe in anything, and we're going to fall for anything.
Mhm. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm always trying to be hopeful. Like I think human beings, like I think that pressure really like allows people to blossom, and sometimes people are under too much pressure, which is kind of where it feels like we're at now. But always
I feel
kind of
like I'm at now.
like we were talking about those pendulums though, like it might be extreme now, but like
Yeah,
I don't know. I think some people really blossom in pressure, and those are like really great leaders. So there's opportunities for really great leaders to come forward, and it almost feels like a hurry up and wait game while like people in office like kind of die, like get out of office, like
for sure.
just like a generation that's their education is like from a college degree they got 50 years ago, and like technology is speeding up so quickly, and information, like how are they even supposed to keep up? You know what I mean? Like
no, there should be fucking term limits.
Yeah, doctors go to school for 8 years. You know how quickly technology around like medicine develops, and then for them to implement it in hospitals and stuff, it's like we have all this information, but we are not like built to process it that quickly. And I don't know, like I think hopefully we can overcome,
I think that's a good point. I think that, well, we will continue to be surprised by what comes out of it. And I'm just going to do my best to, we just have to interact with our fucking nature. That's like the only thing that is, that's the only thing we have, is maybe just try and choose love over choosing fear. And I'm speaking to myself a lot right now, because, when I was young, it was easy. When I was young, I was able to, but I don't. The older I get, the more I find myself kind of falling into a lack of hope, or a lack of, stronger despair, because I'm like, whatever, I'm tired of fighting any of it, but maybe we'll get some good writing out of it.
Right. I mean, a lot can be said about like existential struggles and like finding meaning inside and all that, but it's been really, really great talking to you.
Thank you very much. This is you guys, you got a really good snippet of what fucking Courtney and I do. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for coming on and like having this crazy discourse with me, and just going into whatever we discovered here. You guys, please reach out to me and let us know what you think of this episode. Let us know what you think about any of these topics. If you guys have any other topics you would like for me to cover, please bring that up. We thank you just so much for coming on, Courtney, and I really look forward to speaking with you soon. And you too,
thank you.
Internet.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, thank you guys. Go ahead and find me at perceptuousanonymous@gmail.com or through sailor.owen on Instagram or any of those things, okay? All right, you guys, stay safe and fucking just be nice.